Hello, welcome to the Time First series hosted by CVA Las Mercedes. Thank you, CVA, for hosting this program. My name is Marcia Anglerel, and I'm the Culture Affairs Officer of the Venezuela Affairs Unit. Today, I'm delighted to be the moderator of the second edition of this program, in which we discuss important female leaders. And we've decided to do this in English in order to promote our viewers' English skills. So for those of you who are new to the program, and as a reminder to those who aren't, the way these sessions will work is that we will show the short documentary film, which today is on jazz legend Aretha Franklin. Then we will also host the director of this documentary, Spencer Bakalar. We'll ask her some questions, and we'll take some of your questions that you pose in our chat or that have been sent in advance. You may pose your questions in English or Spanish, and we'll translate those in Spanish for Spencer to answer. So first, let's welcome Spencer. Hi, Spencer. Thanks so much for accepting our invitation.
Thank you so much, Marcia, and thank you so much, everyone, for inviting me. This project was a really big deal for me personally and in my career, and I always love talking about it and sharing just the nuggets of wisdom that I've gleaned from interviewing these women over the past couple of years.
Well, we're very excited to have you with us. Before we get to the film, just let me explain a little bit about who Aretha Franklin is for those of you who aren't familiar with her. So she was an iconic jazz singer, a songwriter, an actress, a pianist, and a political activist. She was also the first woman who was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, along with other awards that she's received. She was also known as the Queen of Soul. And we can talk a little bit about what that means after the film. Okay, so let's get to what you've been waiting for. We'll now watch the Time First video and get to know a little bit more about Aretha Franklin. Wow, as an Aretha Franklin fan, I love that film. So Spencer, welcome back. You've had a very impressive career in journalism at a very young age. So could you tell us a little bit about your experience as a videographer at the Los Angeles Times?
Yeah, absolutely. So I ended up going to journalism school when I was in university. Prior to finding photojournalism, I didn't know anything about this career at all. I grew up in a pretty small town, and most people went into medical field or law, or, I didn't know anything about it. So I stumbled across photojournalism, and I took one class, and I was hooked. And I loved that I had the opportunity to meet so many people outside of my normal bubble. And I learned a little bit of video while I was at school, and ended up receiving an internship scholarship to the Los Angeles Times. And that scholarship paid for the time that I was there on internship. But once there, I really focused on community-driven documentary work. And since most of the photographers on staff didn't know anything about video, this was, oh Lord, I think close to 10 years ago, I got to really shoot and edit and film on pretty big projects because staff members didn't know as much about it. So I got to tell stories about PTSD to environmental injustice to child labor. And it was a really great experience to really focus on doc work in a setting that allowed me to spend a lot of time in the community. And then from there, I got offered a job at Time. And 2 months later, I started working on this project.
Well, that's amazing career that you've had already at your young age. And obviously through this, you've been able to meet incredible people like Aretha Franklin. So tell us a little bit, what was it like for you to meet her and work on this project?
Well, so because I had come from a more community-driven focused journalism, and I started at Time, and I was given this assignment 2 months in, I was pretty terrified because I had not done as many big celebrity interviews when I was here in Los Angeles. So it was terrifying and challenging. And we met Aretha in her father's church in Detroit. And it was such a huge honor to see where she got her start, where she got her inspiration, and where she had donated a lot of her time and resources toward her community. And on the day of the shoot, she was not feeling so well. And I think at that point, a lot of people didn't know that maybe she was not feeling as well as she should. And it definitely affected her during the photo shoot. But as soon as we sat down for the interview, she was very quick to connect with me and very gracious with her time. And we also had the opportunity to listen to her perform Amazing Grace in the church sanctuary, which was just an incredible experience. And there were so many moments like that throughout this project where I was in situations that I could have never imagined myself being and meeting these women that I could have never dreamed of, and experiencing that with such incredible women. And I'm always very grateful for that.
Well, I'm still amazed that she did not want to be a singer at first and was encouraged by her father. And as she says, thank goodness for that. Okay, well, let's start with one of the questions we received in advance. We have one from Sevam.
I believe Marsha got frozen. Is that right?
I think so, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Let me then go and try to make the question. Oh yes, Michelle Lee and all the team in Sebam, in Mérida, and the Andes in Venezuela, they would like to know whether you were able to ask her about all the prizes she has received, and also if she had any cherished award she had.
Yeah, so I actually did not have the chance to ask her that. For a lot of these interviews, and I won't go into a lot of detail because it takes a little while to explain, but we had a very limited amount of time with each of these women, sometimes as short as 10 minutes. So we had to be very, very selective about which questions we thought were the most important that we could use to then create this thread that the video would follow. I actually yesterday looked up my old Google Doc with the questions in it to see, and I did not have a chance to ask her that, but I loved seeing the wall. So behind her in that interview shot, there's a wall of photographs and mementos that I think they put up in honor of her that were really cool to see.
Okay, Marsha is back. Marsha, you have connected from us. So I went in. I'm leaving now. So we already made a question from Sevan. You can continue with the one from Sebak. Bye-bye.
Okay, thanks, Elena. I think our viewers in Venezuela can relate to your internet connection issues. Elena will be back in case I lose connection again. Hopefully not. But yeah, let's take a question from Sevac, which is our binational center in Valencia. And they ask, they say Aretha's music was more than entertainment. Through her songs, she sent powerful messages to the world. Do you have any comment about this?
Absolutely. Her music was more than entertainment. And I think what's really interesting is that she did not necessarily come into that interview ready to talk about her and all the effects that she had on the world. I think in the course of asking her those questions, like how did her music affect the feminist movement, the civil rights movement, I think you can see in the video and in her answers that she had a very matter-of-fact response, that she was happy that it impacted others, but she didn't necessarily put that out there herself. And I think it's really important to remember that, she had her own personal dreams and goals with this incredible gift that she had. And she didn't necessarily go into recording these powerful songs with a feminist or civil rights angle. But she did, in the course of expressing what was important to her with the platform that she had, create a lot of change. And I think that is something that we heard from quite a lot of the women that we interviewed, that, they were just doing the best that they could with the time that they had, and didn't know what effect it would have. But in the course of being in that space and taking those steps forward, they were able to make a lot of change.
Yeah, I can't agree more with all of that. She was definitely an influence, I'd say, in my life in terms of, music and even movies that I saw when I was very young. I did also want to explain a little bit about why she's called the Queen of Soul, because I know we had at least a couple of questions about that. You may have some more to add to this, Spencer, but basically, she's known about that widely, but there is a story that says that when she was crowned the Queen of Soul when she was in Chicago in 1967, where she was headlining a show at Chicago's famous Regal Theater. And at that performance, the Regal Theater promoter and DJ, whose name was Purvis Spann, he placed a crown on Aretha's head, dubbing her the Queen of Soul. But there are lots of other reasons why she's referred to that way. Some said that term came out even earlier than that. But I'd say it's her early background singing in gospel music, her vocal range, her passion, how she shaped music, and the Black experience that really earned her this title.
Absolutely. And we did ask her a little bit about what the difference was in singing in the church and what that brought to music. And I'm actually looking through the transcript now, and she said you have an ethereal feeling being there. And I think starting that root of her musical career there and bringing it to other things really brought a beautiful sense to all of her music.
Right. Okay, well, it looks like we have some questions coming into the chat. We have one from Maria Fernanda Bermudez, a student at CVA Las Mercedes. She asks, why should new generations know about Aretha Franklin's career? Do you have any opinions on that?
I think as a lot of new generations are pushing forward and creating their own change, it's so important to know the people who built those stepping stones for you to get to the place that you are now, so you can push even higher and even further. And Aretha was absolutely 100% someone that you should know about if you're interested in pushing civil rights, equal rights, the feminist movement, you name it. She's an icon and a legend, and it's so important to kind of see where the world has been to know where you can push it forward.
Yeah, exactly. And I would even actually add, I should have mentioned this to begin with, one of the reasons that we're featuring Aretha Franklin for this edition is because it is Black History Month right now, which is, something the United States recognizes officially, but is also recognized around the world. Aretha Franklin was a female leader, in music business, in her political activism, et cetera. So these obviously, I think, are reasons for new generations to know about her and carry her story and the influence that she's had on American culture and politics. We have another question here. Someone from CVA Las Mercedes, Daleska Ramirez, would like to know, how did Aretha fight for racial rights? I know you're not an expert on this, Spencer. I don't know if you have an opinion on this. I'm happy to add some things if you like as well.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
I have a little bit I can add. So her life was intertwined between social justice, religion, and music. And I think her father had a huge part in that. And he was a leader of the church, but he also marched alongside MLK. And those values were, of course, instilled in her growing up. And I think she also made the movement her own by utilizing her own unique talents and fame to advance the causes herself. She very famously has used her own funds to help her community. And she also, I don't know if everyone knows, organized the largest march in the US history just before the March on Washington. So just before that happened, she helped organize the biggest one. And also a lot of people consider her music to be the soundtrack for the civil rights movement. So she really, I think, took what she was good at and what her gifts were and made them her own in this space that was already, underway.
That's right. I mean, actually, her song "Respect," which is one of her most well-known, that's a good example of how she sort of promoted civil rights. This was a song that was originally composed by Otis Redding, but it was reinvented by Aretha Franklin and her sisters, and it became an anthem of the civil rights movement in the 60s, and even of the Me Too movement nowadays. So, as we know, women of color have suffered a double discrimination, both as, minorities and being women. So this became a powerful message for many Black women. Okay. let's see, do we actually, while we're waiting for some other questions to come in, I'd be interested to hear more about, the production of this film. Were there any, I mean, you mentioned she wasn't quite feeling well, but were there any, other challenges that you faced, even maybe you as a female journalist, while making this or any of the other films in the series?
Absolutely. So we were a very small crew. The photographer was a young woman named Luisa Dor, who's a Brazilian photographer. She actually shot all of the portraits that you see on the covers with her iPhone. So it was Luisa, myself, and my co-director, Diane Tsai. We bopped all around the country doing these interviews, and it was a lot of times all the time, we were the only three that showed up and had to get set up. And sometimes we helped Luisa, sometimes Luisa helped us. And I think the time constraints were definitely an issue. We had to be very strategic and very focused on what we needed to get out of it. And as far as like any issues, I have a name that's widely considered a male name. So it was always interesting to see the difference between if I would call maybe an equipment rental place and the way they would react to hearing my voice over the phone versus if I emailed them and then I showed up to grab all this gear and I was a girl. that spans even beyond first. That's been throughout the course of my career, but it is an interesting experience having the name that I do and dealing with that.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I have to admit that threw me off at first too when I saw your name. I'm like, I thought you were male as well. So it happens.
It makes people either remember me or I'm a surprise. So it's good either way, I think.
It's unique and I think it fits you. That's the important thing.
Thank you.
Okay, we have another question here from Maria Alejandra Perez Hernandez, who's asking, did Aretha help the Black Lives Matter movement or with the inclusion of Black people? I'm happy to answer that too, Spencer, but, see if you if you want to go.
I would just say that she helped the Black Lives Matter movement by precluding it and really setting the stage for the next generation to take it and make it bigger and better than it was before, for sure.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, the Black Lives Matter movement was sort of built on a lot of other movements that came before the civil rights movement. The even LGBT movements. All of those are part, of history of protests in the United States, and so certainly Aretha had played a role in that.
I would also say she had a big part in bringing women to the forefront of the civil rights movement as well. I think her songs and then also just herself as an activist really made sure to shine light on the women that were leading the movement as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. We have a comment here that I'll share and then another question. So we have many English students that are watching right now who are fans of Aretha. Thank you for joining us. And they would like to say this is a great opportunity for them to practice their English, which is exactly what we want. And hopefully you're getting some new vocabulary today. And then William would like to know if you found something about Aretha that was not so obvious to her fans.
That is a good question. I know she was famous for always bringing her purse on stage, and she definitely brought her purse around the entirety of the shoot. I think I was just surprised at, like I mentioned before, kind of her, what's the best way to say this? I think it's always really impressive to me when people who are so famous and so well known and so talented don't carry that around with them. She was very, very humble and I just really appreciated that about her. I think it's really easy when you're the queen of soul to maybe expect and be a diva around other people, but I don't think she was that way, which is good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it seems like a lot of people are really interested in Aretha Franklin's, influence in American history and culture. So Valeria asked, why is Aretha so important to American culture? Do you have any thoughts about that?
I think, beyond her contributions to the civil rights movement, which were monumental, she really has spanned the globe in terms of her influence and I mean, I have done a few different of these AFS talks, and everyone always loves Aretha. And I think it's incredible when an artist can transcend different cultures and languages and still bring that power and just the soul of music with it. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Carlos also would like to know if Aretha suffered the effects of racism. I mean, I would say, as a Black woman and growing up in the time that she did, I don't think she could not have. It just unfortunately was a time when there was a lot of racism, even for people, who became as famous as she did. I don't know if she mentioned anything about that in her interview, Spencer.
I don't think we had the time to get into that specifically, but I know for sure that she did. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'd also like to mention, some of her accomplishments, which were pretty incredible. I mean, I mentioned earlier that she was the first woman to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But in 2010, Rolling Stone magazine, which is a very famous and popular magazine in the United States, ranked Aretha Franklin #1 on its list of 100 greatest singers of all time. She was also one of the most successful musical artists of all time. She sold 75 million records worldwide. And she received other awards. As I noted earlier, in 1999, she received the National Medal of the Arts, and in 2005, the Presidential Medal of Freedom, which is one of the highest awards that someone can get in the United States from the president.
I think we also all remember her for when she performed at the Kennedy Center Honors. I don't know if anyone has seen that performance, but she made President Obama cry, and there's a very famous moment when she dropped her fur.
Yes.
So if you haven't seen that, I highly encourage you to look it up.
I've seen parts of that, but it reminds me I would like to see the whole concert because, yes, it was amazing. And that's another thing. She actually performed at the inaugurations of 3 U.S. presidents, at President Clinton, Jimmy Carter, and President Obama's first inauguration. Okay, looks like we have a couple other comments here. Enrique Lara from Sevac in Valencia says that Luciano Pavarotti was an admirer of hers. That's a great piece of trivia. I did not know that, but I'm not surprised. Aretha Franklin apparently had a vocal range of 4 octaves, which I don't know much about singing, but that seems pretty incredible to me. So yeah, I can see why Luciano Pavarotti would also, be an admirer of hers. We're getting close to the end. I don't know if there are any, final thoughts or other things you'd like to add about your interview with her, or, your work on this project.
I would just encourage everyone to take a look through the series. One thing that we really tried to do was find interview as many people as we could, so that anyone going to the collection, it's online at time.com/firsts. But anyone looking through could find someone that they can connect to and learn from. And they're very digestible, not super long. I don't think any of them are longer than 4 minutes, but there's so many incredible women on that list. And then my other plug for Aretha, there is a documentary called Amazing Grace that came out within the last year or two. Time doesn't exist now with the pandemic, but it is a very beautiful feature-length doc that uses footage that was never used from a gospel concert that she held in Los Angeles. It's amazing. If you guys have the chance to go digging for it, it might be on Netflix, but I'm not 100% sure. But that's another plug for Aretha.
That's a great recommendation. So yeah, I'll have to check that one out as well. Let's see. We have another question just came in from Spencer from William. He would like to know if you have a favorite song of Aretha's. That's a great question.
I always like I Say a Little Prayer. That's a good one. I mean, Respect is, can't top it, but Say a Little Prayer is also a really good one.
Yeah. If I had to pick one, I would have a hard time. I mean, Respect always comes to mind, but I always really like the song Think as well. One of my earliest memories, I think, of Aretha Franklin was the movie Blues Brothers, in which she sings that song in the movie. And it's just always stuck with me. Okay, well, we are coming up on the end of the session. just want to make sure, that our audience is aware that we will be continuing this series. We have about 4 more to go. So we'd like to invite you back in 2 weeks at the same time and day to join us for the next episode. Spencer, thank you so much for accepting our invitation. It's really been a pleasure having you here meet our Venezuelan audience. Do you have a final thought you'd like to share?
No, I'm just excited to come back for more, and I appreciate you guys talking to me and asking me to come, and it's always such a pleasure to talk about this project.
Well, we look forward to having you back in one of our future series. Okay, and thank you again to Sevilla Las Mercedes team for hosting us. You've really been excellent. And thank you to all of our audience and your questions. We really hope to see you back here at our next series. Have a great rest of the afternoon, everyone. And I hope you take the time to learn more about Aretha and listen to her music.